But now, Luke 7:47. Jesus is talking. A sinner woman came and fell at his feet, washed his feet with her tears, and dried it with the hairs of her head. And the Pharisees were incensed that Jesus would let a sinner touch him. Religious people didn't let sinners touch him. Listen to what is said. Jesus speaking, "Wherefore I say unto thee." He's going to agree with them for a minute. "Her sins, which are many." He was on the same page with those Pharisees there. That's a filthy sinner woman. "Her sins, which are many." Here's where he parts company from the Pharisees. "Her sins, which are many, are forgiven." Why am I including this verse? "For she loved much, but to whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little." I want that verse to sink into your heart. Jesus said this woman loved much because her many sins were forgiven. But to who is forgiven little? Now I got news for you, that's nobody on the planet. We've all sinned since the age of accountability. But Jesus is making a point. If you've just been forgiven a little bit, then guess how much you're going to love Jesus? A little bit. Now get into the head of Paul. Why was he so radically in love with Jesus? Because he thought he was forgiven more than anybody else because he was the worst sinner on the planet. He who's forgiven much loves much. Now I'm going to tell you something. Every Christian on this planet has been forgiven much. So what are you getting at, brother? I'm getting at we've all been forgiven much, but we don't all know that. Some of us think we're pretty good. Jesus demands perfection. Nothing but absolute obedience and perfection gets you to heaven. We kept flunking the test, so God sent Jesus to take it for us. I flunked it and I flunked it and I flunked it. On my best day I flunked it again. And on my better day than that I flunked it again. But God so loved David that He sent His only begotten Son to take the test for me. And He did. And He got 100 on it. I'm going to heaven because when He took the blame for my sin, He gave me the credit for His 100. I'm going to heaven because I'm not perfect, but I've been credited with perfection. The only way to heaven. The idea that I can be a little better than my neighbor, I'm not doing anything worthy of hell. In the eyes of a perfect God, He kicked a man out of the garden for eating a piece of fruit. Amen? You think you don't do anything so bad? Adam had a snack. And God kicked out of the Garden of Eden. You don't think God's standards are high? A snack! And kicked out of the Garden of Eden. This idea that so many Christians have, I'm not so bad, they don't understand the message of the gospel. How rotten we are without Christ in comparison to a perfect God. How unfit we are to ever be around Him for any passing thought that's offensive to God, that passes through our mind, for any offensive word we speak, for any whatever it is. We are totally in our righteousness unworthy. And so we read in Romans 3, as Paul quotes from the Old Testament, there is none righteous, no, not one. Where in that same passage he's saying, all of our righteousness is as filthy rags. We were totally lost. And in America and westernized Christianity, we lose that and we think we're good people. We think God's grading on a curve and I'm better than my neighbor. And what's the end result of that? We think we're forgiven little, so we love little. We get in church, are we ready to do what Paul did? Are we ready to go out and move mountains to see people saved? We don't have that passionate love Paul had. Why? Because Paul was driven to this thought, my God, I'm the worst sinner that ever lived. And because he was forgiven much, he was consumed with a love for God. How do we get this idea out of American Christians that they're good people? God didn't have to forgive me all that much.